Gary Young was always on a mission to find natural products. And the ancient grain of the Bible had to be different, simpler and easier to digest than modern processed wheat. Little did he know that the world's oldest wheat was already being grown right next to the lavender he loved so much. Hello and welcome to Young Living's podcast, The Wild Drop. My name is Jacob Young, your host. Young Living is the world leader in producing and distributing premium essential oils. And this podcast will provide you with drops of information about Young Living, including stories, history, product information, lots of little fun facts, and even more. Today we are joined on the podcast all the way from the south of France, Nicolas Landel. Nicolas, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you. Doing great. How are you?
Doing wonderful. Hey, you should tell everybody what you've been doing today.
So today we've been doing a little experiment with a shovel. And this experiment is we've been planting trees inside some of our lavender fields. And so today was olive trees.
Today was olive trees. I love it. Now, we're talking about Einkorn, and we just recently released Einkorn Crunch, which, for those of you who haven't tried it yet, you must buy it, you must try it. Absolutely delicious. And it was so funny because we released it on April 1st, so everybody thought it was an April Fool's joke. But it's not. It's on the website. You can purchase it. It's amazing. It's super tasty, super wonderful. And we may or may not have more flavors coming out here in the next little bit. So you'll just have to try it out, see what you think about it. I'm kind of biased. I love it. I think it's great. And once again, talking about Einkorn. Nicolas, what is Einkorn?
Einkorn. Einkorn is something that actually is quite dear to me because I grew up eating einkorn. I mean, in the south of France, in this specific region where the farm is, you can find einkorn bread and you can find a lot of einkorn different recipes, and it's very common. But it's interesting because it's almost kind of this secretive, at least it was this secretive thing that it was common here, but not common at all towards the rest of France or rest of Europe. And so einkorn, to explain it, is the very first original form of wheat. So it's never been selected, it's never been hybridized. And it has nutritional values that you don't see in modern wheat. And it's so different, actually, than what we call modern wheat, that they look very, like, the plants look different. On the genome level, it's different. It's a different plant.
So it's completely different from the wheat that we know nowadays. And what makes einkorn so special?
Well, there's actually a lot of things. Einkorn is a plant in its natural form. So, you know, when we get involved often, and you have this process of selection, what is done often when a farmer or a company selects a plant and tries to change it, what they want is, for example, with wheat, you want the kernels to stay attached to the stem, so that when you harvest it, you don't lose any kernels. Einkorn is not like this. It's never been selected, so it's original. And in this sense, basically, it takes very long for it to grow, about 2-3 times longer than wheat. It takes 11 months, so almost a full year to grow einkorn.
Yeah,
The yield is very, very low. Compared to wheat, because never been selected. It doesn't need to have big seeds. It just needs to have good quality seeds so it can continue on. And that's the first part, the fact that it's just the natural form it's ever been. But also when you look, and I think that's where we're most interested in, on the nutritional side of einkorn, that's where kind of where it gets really interesting. And I think that's also where your father got really interested in, was the nutritional part of einkorn, with the amount of vitamins, with the amount of minerals, with everything you can find in einkorn. To me, it comes from the fact that it's a crop that takes 11 months to grow, the first months from autumn to winter, it grows deep roots so that it can gather all those nutrients. And then it grows, to where late August we can harvest it, September off.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, so einkorn is very special. And the word that you were looking for earlier, maybe not secretive, but just unknown to the world, but I guess also secretive because sometimes you guys don't
Yeah,
like to share.
no, I think that the reason why it stayed in this region of France is because it was an amazing cover crop for the lavender. And you must understand that in the region where we are, the soils are very poor. There's no irrigation possible. There's no access to water. And so the amount of crops that we can technically grow is very limited. We couldn't grow tomatoes or vegetables or anything because everything would dry out.
Yeah.
And lavender survives very well and loves this climate. Modern wheat would need, a lot of fertilizers, a lot of products. Einkorn needs none of that and grows very easily in that. And so farmers would just grow the einkorn because they needed a rotation after the lavender. They would leave the straws also in the field so that, it brings organic matter to the field. And nobody knew about it, so there wasn't a market to sell it, so they would just eat it. And they thought, nobody cares about einkorn, nobody even knows what it is. So it's great for where we are to grow and to rotate with.
Yeah.
But I'll just feed my family with it. And so we grow up eating this, and it was amazing. And to this day, einkorn bread is from far my favorite bread ever.
It's amazing, especially like our einkorn flour pancakes. Like, when I make einkorn flour pancakes for guests and for friends, they're like, wow, this tastes like it doesn't taste like normal pancakes. It tastes even better. Einkorn just has a very special flavor. It can be very difficult to cook with sometimes because it doesn't have the hybridization like most wheat and the way that it's cooked and whatnot. I remember the very first time that my mom cooked einkorn bread, the shell, the outer crust was literally as hard as a brick, and we accidentally dropped it on the tile and it broke the tile. But the inside, once we opened up the inside, it was extremely soft, very, very soft, very, very tasty as well. So talking about einkorn, we have to answer the question that everybody wants to know is how did Young Living get into the einkorn business?
Well, like most good stories in Young Living, they start with your father, Gary. Gary was coming. Actually, Gary had been looking for einkorn for quite some time because einkorn has had and has been growing in other regions than the south of France. We didn't keep it only to us. Like it was in a lot of different places around the world. And so he had been looking and searching for that original grain with amazing nutritional value around the world. But what he didn't know is that it was actually on one of his farms. And like I said, it was so, for most farmers, it was so just something that it's just part of the rotation, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody ever talked about it. And so my father wanted to promote it a little more, and he really saw the value of einkorn. But once again, it's difficult. You have to educate people that they understand that what they're eating right now is harmful, but there's a solution for it. And so one time, and I was there actually, your father came to the farm. It was winter time, and so my father presented him einkorn that we had grown on the farm. And my father had asked me to make a whole meal also. So I tried making kind of weird pancakes and all sorts of things like that. And Gary was just amazed because he was actually looking for that for so long, and it was right there. And so, of course, this went very quickly after that. We went to visit Blondie. Blondie is the nickname that your father gave Jerome. Jerome, we call him. His name is Jerome, we call him Le Blond in French, which means the
The
blonde guy
blonde,
because
yeah.
he's blonde. It's not far to, but so we roughly translated, it goes to Blondie, and so from there on, it's been Blondie, and even us we call it Blondie now in French, in English.
I love that.
Um, so Blondie is one of the farmers that had been working with us for a very long time, but he is extremely passionate about einkorn, and so he even created all those machines himself to clean the husk and prepare the grain so that we can make flour and other products out of it. And so he had built kind of this small building himself and done everything. And he was the one, pushing farmers to continue einkorn and trying to find markets. And so we went, with your father to visit him. They had met, but for lavender and other parts, not for einkorn. And from there we just continued on, and like the first young living products to launch were the pancake mix,
Yep.
and then others continued on, and more and more farmers and started growing einkorn. Something that's quite amazing is that what I was saying before, if a farmer grows wheat, they would technically have to use a lot of fertilizers, a lot of product in that field, which is horrible, for that field.
Yeah.
With einkorn, even if you wanted to, it would have a negative impact on the plant. So einkorn doesn't actually want any of those products, and so it was amazing that we already had a large set of farmers that were following seed to seal, so they could just right then and there start growing more einkorn, because there was a demand. So not just for them, for once they could actually sell something from that rotation. But then we could get other farmers that we hadn't been working with, interested in einkorn, and to stop all that they were doing that was costing them almost more than what they were earning from it, because of all
Hmm.
the products that they had. There's a transition phase where we couldn't work with them for a certain time because of the soil. But after that transition, then we got more and more farmers interested and asking and coming and knocking and saying, "Hey, can we grow einkorn? Because we would actually make a living off of that crop." And so this whole thing came together wonderfully.
Wow, that's great. And going back, so my dad was searching the world for einkorn, and you've talked about how einkorn has a lot of benefits to it. What are the benefits to einkorn? Why would someone want to pick einkorn over the standard wheat that they go and buy at the grocery store right now? Why is einkorn better for them, like you were saying, to eat as well?
So um, I'll start by saying I'm not a doctor, or I'm not a nutritionist. So it's something that I've read, that I've understood, and I'm going to use my own words. But I definitely should push people to read also, and understand themselves. But with einkorn, first of all, you have a very low amount of gluten. And everybody, is so afraid of gluten nowadays. Gluten is a protein, and proteins are important to us in specific amounts, in specific forms. And the big difference is that for some that has an actual how do you celiac disease,
Yeah.
they cannot they cannot have gluten. But for many that are intolerant, it's not really just intolerance for gluten, it's that it's not well balanced in the plant. And with einkorn, you have very little of it. You still have some, and it has a positive effect, actually, the fact that there's protein. But with that, you have a huge amount of different vitamins, of different minerals. And that's also why when you eat einkorn, you can take about a third of the quantity that you would eat with, like if it's pasta, of regular wheat pasta, and you would feel fuller much quicker, and you would have a lot more nutritional value from what you're eating than just wheat. My father says it like this, if I'm trying to say it simply is that wheat is the poison and einkorn is the antidote.
I love
Because
it.
modern wheat will actually harm you. We hear, and once again, I'm not a doctor, so I don't want to say, that this is fundamentally true, but we hear a lot about more and more people getting leaky gut syndrome,
Hmm.
about inflammation of the gut. We hear more and more about people having allergies that also sometimes, I've read that they coincide with leaky gut syndrome. And so I feel like in our nutrition nowadays, it's the reason is what we eat. Einkorn would be the solution in a sense, but we would have to stop eating modern wheat and stop eating, also a lot of other products that are not good for us nowadays.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely crazy. And this kind of goes along the reason as to why my dad was looking. My dad always had a reason to look for something. He always had the saying of purpose over profit. And for him to find this wheat that he's been reading about, the ancient grain of the Bible, the original grain of the Bible, and to find out that it's healthy for you, that people who, like you said, are intolerant to gluten can take it and actually are able to eat it because it has a very, very small amount of gluten with the minerals and vitamins, is amazing. And it's unfortunate that we're in a world nowadays where the wheat has been hybridized and adjusted so much that our digestive system can't digest it properly. Where, like you were saying, einkorn hasn't been touched at all. It hasn't been adjusted. And so for our bodies, it's very easy to digest. You don't have leaky gut issues or anything like that. And this is from research that has been done by hundreds of different universities, research institutes. It's amazing. And we have a lot of people. Like, I remember when my dad was really getting into the research of einkorn, he asked them the same question, like, why is einkorn so special? And they're like, for people that have a hard time with gluten, they're able to eat the einkorn because our body can digest it.
If I can add on to this, there's a interesting point of comparison to me, which with our lavender. I mean, sorry, but the French farm is a lavender farm, so I often do this. But if you take one of the molecules from our lavender essential oil, and you take linalool, and linalool is on every label, warning, there's linalool in there, and everybody's kind of saying things. Because if you would take just, isolate linalool in great quantities and utilize it, it would have a very harmful effect. But linalool in a fully distilled and quality essential oil is perfectly balanced. And so you have, it makes a totally different effect. And I think it's the same with einkorn. You have gluten, but it's balanced with other products. And when there's an imbalance, then you have a harmful product. So this is where, nature does things right, and we just try and stay on track is a good idea.
No, I think that's absolutely great. So with all of the einkorn products that we have, correct me if I'm wrong or add on to this, we have the pancake mix, we have the standard flour mix, and then we have the crunch, right? Do we have any other products or just those three?
Yeah, we have the berries, we have rotini pasta, we have spaghettis.
That's right.
So yeah, there is, quite a full. But I think what's interesting with einkorn is, and that's what we heard back a lot from people, getting those products were, hey, give us the berries, give us the flour. We want to start cooking. And I think that was kind of the, listen, we're giving you the most quality product. And I can talk about the freshness of einkorn because we're very thorough on that. But the easiest product, and you can do anything with it. And so the berries and the flour, and then we started doing, pasta and other ready to eat. So almost ready to eat, just have to cook them. But products. But the main things are those. Like that way, people can
Yeah.
cook at home and start putting it everywhere. And try to figure out how to replace wheat because it's not that easy. I
Yeah.
agree.
No, it's very difficult to. So for those that don't know what an einkorn berry is, what is it?
Okay. It's a grain. I mean, it's the seed of the plant, and that's what we eat. So if I were to be specific, there's a stem, there's a lot of different berries on it, kind of put in a V shape, on that stem. But
Yeah.
around the berry is a protective layer called the husk. Now, on wheat, the husk was something that was selected to be very thin and go off very easily, so that when they harvest it, the husk would go away, and then the berry's ready to eat. But for einkorn, the husk is this very thick protective layer that actually weighs as much as the berry, and that protects it from the outside, from animals, from bacteria, from all sorts of things. And we store it this way to keep the berry inside very fresh.
And with these berries, do we use them specifically for flour, or are we using them for something else? What are the berries used for most commonly?
So we can make a lot of different things with the berries. Almost anything that you can do with wheat, you can do with einkorn. Um, we wanted to make sure that we can protect the nutritional value of that
Yes.
product, because like an orange juice, if you squeeze it and leave it outside for 200 days, it's not going to have the same vitamins and flavor and everything. So with something fragile like einkorn, because of its nutritional value, we had to make sure that we preserved it. And so everything that we have here to clean the berries is mechanical, but we make sure to preserve the berry in its entirety. And once we go into making flour, for example, we use a stone mill. And the reason is that the stone mill, over a roller mill, which is two metal rolls, the stone mill doesn't heat as much when they grind the berries into flour. And the heat would make it lose some of its nutritional value. But we also, I'll give the example of the pasta, for example. We have to clean the berries, then we have to go into the mill, and then we would send the flour to make the pasta. But we would do this about a couple days before the pastas are set to be made, because we want to not have to store einkorn only in its flour form, if it's not in sealed and a protected environment. So we want to make sure that we don't, store it and lose nutritionals for no reason. So we'll mill it a couple days before production to make sure that we conserve the nutritionals the most we can. But we can transform those berries into anything.
I love that. That's awesome. So with cooking, because cooking with einkorn is different, for those who are listening and are like, wow, I'm really excited about this einkorn, I want to try cooking it. What are your recommendations or your tips and tricks with cooking with einkorn? And you have to share. You can't just keep these secrets to yourself.
So I love cooking. So actually, I do have a couple tips. First of all, einkorn is very sticky.
Yes,
It's just very sticky.
very.
So if you're used to making a nice dough that's like all perfectly shaped, no, it's not going to work. It's very sticky. So you have to use, little wooden spatulas and things like this, or just, go with your hand, but, that's fine. The fact that there's very little gluten means that don't expect it to rise or to expand and make those big fluffy things either. Usually what we do is that we add a little bit more water, even though it sounds kind of opposite because it's sticky, but we keep the einkorn has this ability to retain the water also even more. So the moisture that you get after cooking it is amazing. And that's where it gets interesting. It's tricky to deal with it, but once you've cooked it, you're kind of happy. So you have to go against your initial thought process of saying, oh, this is way too sticky, let me add more and more flour. You're just going to get something very breaky, that can
Very hard.
break your floor. But if you go against that, and you have to give a little patience while you're making that sticky dough, then it's actually going to be really amazing. And what I've discovered, and I personally love, einkorn has this quality when it's mixed with honey. it becomes for some reason uh, just this how do you say this, like it has this fluffiness that I don't really know how to explain. I make like a banana cake with honey, bananas, and einkorn flour,
Mm.
and it's divine. And if you've ever done it with typical sugar, no, it's not really good. It doesn't work well with honey. For some reason, they work together, and they just have this fluffiness, and it's just wonderful. So use honey instead of sugar also, if ever you want to make cookies or desserts. Like with einkorn, there's other solutions.
I love that. I want to quickly share a funny story about cooking einkorn. I remember the first time that we cooked einkorn pasta, I think it was spaghetti. We knew that it was sticky, but we didn't know how to make it like not sticky. And you're right, because, my mom was like, well, my dad was saying like add a bit more water. My mom's like, no, you usually don't add a bit more water. So instead of like having spaghetti, it was more like spaghetti meatballs because they never like came apart. And so you would like pick it up and just eat these balls of spaghetti because it was it was so sticky. But it was so good. It was like the flavor and the richness of it was just really, and it had like a really nice um almost kind of like a gritty texture to it, which I appreciated. I enjoyed. And maybe we didn't cook it entirely right. I'm That's probably what
No, but
happened.
it's tricky. You have to kind of learn again. Like with the pasta, you cook it. Usually, it takes a little bit longer. The grainy part is that we don't take we keep it's like a whole flour. Is that how you
Yeah.
say
Hmm.
when you so around the berry is a little skin layer, and the more you take, what's that, the bran, yeah, the bran, and so that's the bran, and the more bran you take away, the more white of the flour technically you have.
Mm.
But we keep it whole because the bran has vitamin E and wonderful things in it, and so that's the grainy part. But we could technically put a different, it's just a sifter. So we could change the sifter.
I
But
love
I
that.
like it whole.
Yeah, I think whole is great too, and you're getting amazing nutritional value from all of it as well. So, for you, what is your favorite Einkorn product that we have?
My favorite Einkorn product. First of all, I really love those crunches. They're not open to international markets. I'm very upset with that.
We're
Um,
we're working
because
on
I
that. It's coming soon, I promise.
because I was not a part of the making, I would say, but I was in a lot of meeting and conversation. I know the secret recipe, and I'm not sharing it, but I know how to make it at home. So I've been making it at home, waiting for you guys, to allow us to get some. But I think the pasta
Mm.
is, and maybe it's cultural, but whenever I'm just too tired and I just want to cook something quickly, the einkorn pasta is just an easy go-to, like very easy. I absolutely love it, and I still really love cooking, so I can still make my little sauce, and with goat cheese and other parts like this, and feel like I've done something instead of just cook pasta. But yeah, einkorn pasta would be my favorite.
Yeah, Nicholas, I'm super excited, especially because we're going to be coming to France here shortly on a little expedition. You'll get to hear more about that shortly, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, you'll have to show me how to cook einkorn, and we can meet up with Blondie, and Blondie can show me how to cook einkorn as well. So
Yeah, we'll start at the beginning with the berries, and we'll grind the berries into flour, and then we'll make pasta. So from scratch to, well, actually, we can start at the field side, but I don't think you're coming long enough to grow einkorn 11 months. But
yeah, I won't be there for 11 months, but you can at least like walk me through the process.
will do for sure. I would love that.
Awesome. Well, Nicolas Landel, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Once again, Nicolas is the French farm manager and regional director of Europe and Africa Farms. We appreciate you for joining us virtually on the podcast today, and we'll let you get back to work out there in the field with your shovel, which you love so much.
Thanks so much for having me, and it was a pleasure to talk about einkorn.
You're
Thanks.
more than welcome, and I'm sure we'll have you back on the show sometime soon. Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. Really quickly, before we finish out the episode, I know some of you are probably like, oh, I want to learn how to cook and I want to learn more about einkorn. Well, I've got good news for you. We do have this wonderful einkorn cookbook that is available on the website. If you go to www.youngliving.com and type in the search bar, einkorn cookbook, you'll be able to find it there. It has all kinds of different ingredients, recipes, all sorts of different stuff that you can do with einkorn. So if you're interested and want to learn more about that, you can check it out there. The link for this will be down below in the YouTube description. So for those of you that aren't over here on YouTube, you'll have to come over, check it out, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But no, thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and our newly refurbished website at www.youngliving.com. Once again, don't forget to oil up Young Living family. This is Jacob Young with a Wild Drop, dropping out. Take care.